Perhaps the darkest part of the Tolkien family's history are the abhorrent allegations against J.R.R. Tolkien's eldest son, Father John Tolkien, during his time as a Roman Catholic priest in the Archdiocese of Birmingham from 1946 to 1994. These allegations describe reports of child sexual abuse that spanned decades and involved numerous victims, both named and unnamed. Therefore, the nature of this video, which will describe the crimes and the context of the case, may be unsettling to some, and as it will likely get demonetized, any support is much appreciated. Viewer discretion is advised. John Francis Reuel Tolkien was born in 1917 as the eldest child of J.R.R. Tolkien and his wife Edith. John, as you can imagine if you know anything of his father, grew up in a strongly religious and especially Catholic household. From a young age, he was particularly close to his father, and to those who have read, or at least know of, the letters from Father Christmas, this beautiful Christmas tradition had actually started with young John. From this, you can begin to form a picture of the family environment that John grew up in and his relationship with his parents. It is also to John that the famous Tom Bombadil incident is attributed. It was John, after all, who had stolen his younger brother Michael's Dutch doll and thrown it in the latrine. The doll's signature yellow boots and blue jacket, as well as its deadly experience with the water, are what inspired J.R.R. Tolkien with the character of Tom Bombadil. From an early age, John had shown an inclination and perhaps even strong interest for the priesthood. His formal education was conducted at a Catholic boarding school in Berkshire, the Oratory School, while he received his Bachelor of Arts in English at Exeter College, Oxford in 1939. Finally, in the same year, he began his seminary studies at the English College in Rome, whose operations moved to England due to the outbreak of the Second World War. John Tolkien was officially ordained as a priest following the end of the war in 1946. The now Father John Tolkien served in numerous parishes of the Archdiocese of Birmingham throughout his career, and he was generally known for his gentleness and intellect, as well as, and this is important, his interest at teaching the youth and leading a number of scout groups and youth camps. It is these activities that would later become the epicenter of the allegations made against him. For the vast majority of his long career as a priest, however, almost no one had ever officially come forward, nor was there any substantial wave of rumors regarding the abuse of children. This changed with the first allegation made against Father John by a man named Christopher Rooney, later known as Christopher Cary, made on September 2, 1993. Christopher had approached the then Archbishop of Birmingham to inform him that John Tolkien had sexually abused him on 3 occasions back in 1957, when Christopher was only 12 years old. Specifically, Tolkien had allegedly taken the child into the presbytery, or priest residence, where he went on to commit unspeakable abuse, including, allegedly, in what was described a pseudo-religious way. The Archbishop, a man named Maurice Cove de Mouville, took down Christopher's statement and added it to the personal file of Father John Tolkien. According to the report of the IICSA, more documents from the file suggest that others had come forth previously, including a teenage scout, although nothing came of it. Nonetheless, the Archbishop informed Christopher Cary of the difficulties involved in the case after the passage of 3 decades, and that Father Tolkien would soon retire anyway. Regardless, he apparently voiced his support that if the matter was taken to the police, the church would assist in the investigation. In 1994, Mr. Cary did take the matter to the authorities, but no police action was ever reported. In 2000, Cary again wrote to the Archdiocese, and specifically the new Archbishop, Vincent Nichols, to inform him of the abuse and ask him to launch an investigation. By 2001, the West Midland Police also commenced its own investigation into Father John Tolkien, although the Crown Prosecution Service ultimately announced in the very next year that it would not pursue any legal process against the, by then, old and sick John Tolkien. Nevertheless, they made sure to confirm that the evidential test for a prosecution was passed, but the charges dropped strictly because of Tolkien's health. By 2002, John Tolkien had already been suffering from Parkinson's disease and severe dementia, in combination with an already declining health. He died on January 22, 2003, having adamantly denied all allegations until the end. His denial, declining health, or eventual death, however, did not stop investigations into the matter, especially its connection to how the Catholic Archdiocese of Birmingham handled abuse as a whole. In June of 2002, yet another victim came forward, named RCA383 in the documents, and wrote to Archbishop Nichols. He described being inspired by Mr. Carey's account and how he was certain that Father Tolkien was lying in his denial of the charges because RCA383 had also been abused in a similar way. In its investigation, the Archdiocese found even more alleged victims, including another priest who claimed Tolkien had abused them too. This led to the solicitors of the Archdiocese itself to advise the church to settle the matter, as they believed a court of law would conclude that Father Tolkien had indeed sexually abused Mr. Christopher Carey. This course of action was further strengthened by the discovery of a 1968 note which described Father Tolkien forcing a group of Boy Scouts to expose themselves as he sprinkled them with holy water, including a reference that Tolkien had not only admitted to these allegations at the time, but was also sent to therapy in order to deal with it. This was not reported to the police either then or upon its rediscovery in 1993. Finally, in July of 2003, the Archdiocese gave Christopher Carey £15,000, though without the official admission of liability. These, however, were mostly the cases of Carey and RCA383, with some mentions of other individual victims. Unfortunately, this was not all. The case of alleged victim RCA343 describes a 13-year-old boy enrolled in the early 1970s to a nearby Catholic school attached to the local church where Father Tolkien served. Eventually, the boy became an altar boy at the church, and it was during this time that he interacted more closely with John. Specifically, Tolkien had asked the boy to do the first reading at Mass, but as RCA343 struggled and generally had a difficulty with reading, the father suggested that the boy should come to his house for quote-unquote special reading lessons. Allegedly, once the boy went, Father Tolkien told him that he had been chosen for a quote-unquote special prayer ceremony, and that this ceremony must be kept a secret, or else Jesus would know. Father Tolkien then, allegedly, went on to remove the boy's trousers and sexually abuse him. The boy, understandingly ignorant, or perhaps fearful or confused, went on to visit Father Tolkien on another 3 to 5 occasions, being abused on each of them. This too was reported to the police in 2000 after RCA343 saw an article of Mr. Carey's account. He was ultimately informed, however, that the Crown would not pursue a case on account of Tolkien's health, but following his death, he brought a civil claim against the Archdiocese itself. This claim eventually resulted in what is described by the report as a modest sum. I would like to remind you that the note which had described Father Tolkien's abuse and subsequent therapy had been written in 1968, before this incident took place. Therefore, we have a clear and undeniable record of alleged abuse over the span of decades. Ultimately, both the Tolkien family and the Archdiocese wanted to avoid any legal proceedings and opted to settling the cases that came up. Regardless, on this incident and the allegations of cover-up, at least in reference to the 1968 note describing the original allegations, Archbishop Nichols said, "By any standards today, what happened then was not right, it was wrong, and it led directly to his abuse, which I sincerely regret. Now that he knows that that report was given in 1968, I'm sure that has renewed and deepened his sense of betrayal and his sense of hurt, and I apologize for that." Other victims include an 11-year-old, who later attempted at the age of 16. In regards to the modus operandi of Father Tolkien, every single case of sexual abuse that I found mentioned the addition of religious symbolism or connotations to the act itself. Most common was the claim that the depravity he allegedly committed was self-described as special prayers which will elevate you on a level towards God. Whether this was used merely as a manipulation tactic against the boys, or it meant something more for the abuser, we will likely never know. What we will also likely never know was the extent of the knowledge that the wider Tolkien family had of the, at the bare minimum, allegation of the abuse, as opposed to the reality of them. Official biographies on Tolkien, or even the letters themselves, have little mention of John, and the vast majority of accusations came to the surface decades after the death of J.R.R. Tolkien himself. Therefore, as to his personal knowledge of all of this, or that of his family, I can unfortunately not tell you based on the available public evidence. Nonetheless, a very curious piece of information can find its source in a 1994 recording, which allegedly captured the voice of Father John Tolkien himself. In this recording, Tolkien apparently details the sexual abuse that he himself suffered as a child in the 1920s. Specifically, he allegedly said, "When I was a boy, I was constantly surrounded by my father and colleagues of my father. Almost without exception, his colleagues were academics, and, some of them were pretty strange fellows. Often, people would stay the night at our house. I often awoke in the morning to find someone sharing my bed. More often than not, it would be, I don't intend to name names, just to say that this particular person who I love dearly, not in a sexual way, you understand, this person would be fast asleep, huddled up next to me when I woke in the morning. Well, let's say, things had gone on in the night. I knew this. If you wake up with your pajamas off and they were on when you went to sleep, you would wonder, wouldn't you?" The Tolkien family and its estate, as far as I'm aware, declined to provide any comment. As far as I am concerned, it is my personal opinion, based on the reports, as well as the professional opinions of the legal experts involved, that John Tolkien was indeed an abuser. To what extent his family knew about it, and most of all his father, who was alive when some of the abuse took place, I do not know. If it is true that he was sent to therapy in the late 1960s, there is a chance someone knew about it, and about why. This speculation I will leave to you. A massive thank you to my channel members, and thank you very much for watching.